The following material will briefly introduce the viewer to the one-year process from July 1998 to August 1999. During this time, Cuban-born sculptor Tomas Oliva accomplished the commissioned project of conceiving and executing the front doors for the new St. Andrew Church in the city of Sumner, Washington, United States. This documentary is a nonprofit endeavor. This is the approved model to be enlarged 10 times. The artist inserts anchors along the perimeter of the wooden board. He uses a 100-foot long rope to create a 1:10 proportional grid. Once the grid is finished, he begins drawing the outline of the bas relief in order to build the armature that supports the clay. The armature is made of wood, wire, galvanized wire grid, and the traditional wired wooden crosses. It is important to keep a safe margin for the clay that will be added on top of the armature. The artist adds the clay firmly, covering the entire surface. The proportions of the approved model should be kept. There should be cross-checking between the dimensions of the approved model and the enlarged model to avoid deformations. This extensive process will consume the following 5 months. No form should protrude beyond the panel frame. To keep it this way, the bas relief must be shaved periodically, using a straight edge to cut away all the forms beyond the limit. Detailing the forms carefully and achieving the bas relief effect, in correspondence with the approved transition model, can be time-consuming and demanding. This is particularly important while working with models. Clay must remain moistened by spraying water periodically. To avoid drying, the work must be covered with a plastic sheet and a tarp. Shaping the bas-relief is always a painful process, as some of the important details disappear and must be recreated all over again within the fixed limits. Oliva said that portraying the faces of the kids was a challenging and exciting process. A pattern was drafted in order to start the fabrication of the door panels. At the same time, the modeling was finished. Details are important, as the clay model will be transferred one-to-one into the wood using point transferring equipment specially tailored to work on a flat surface. On March 7th, modeling was completed and a photographer took pictures of the end product. Anytime a molding process takes place, the piece is vulnerable to possible distortion or even partial damage. By this time, the door's panels were ready. All the incisions for hardware were done, so the artist had to be extremely cautious to avoid cutting a hole during carving. The bottom of the doors was reinforced with steel to avoid eventual warping in the future. An experienced team was hired to perform the job, and they proposed to experiment with a new polyurethane compound from the Smooth-On brand, which was never before used in a work of this magnitude. Given the nature of the poricast polyurethane molding compound, the material had to be mixed in small batches, making sure each portion was a precise amount. After casting was successfully accomplished, the model was painted in white and the 1.5-ton doors were lifted and fixed to begin transferring and carving. Some carving was done on the back side of the doors. While carving took place, the molders were used to create a temporary bound-in bronze plug to use in place of the real doors, in order to cover the entrance while work on the final product continued. The machine was made of aluminum for lightness. Nonetheless, moving the 35 pounds by hand back and forth became a burden over time. The machine has to be centered using triangulation for accuracy. As you can imagine, beginning an irreversible operation on a 1.5 ton of Honduran mahogany is a demanding process. Only faith and a responsible professional approach can guide and empower the artist at this point. On the other side of the studio, casting the bounded bronze bas-relief goes smoothly. The bas-relief was filled with a mix of polyurethane and sawdust. This gave it its strength and lightweight. Given the short time left for the carving, no new technology should be left to spare. Research and experimentation with new tools was an essential part of the process. The cast is cleaned and polished, while the carving goes at full throttle. The method of transferring points is the same system used by 3D laser scanners of today, but it is the same process artists used for centuries to transfer models into final and costly materials.
The bishops coming to consecrate the church.
That day, August 29th.
By the end, traditional wood chisels are demonstrated to be the best for the fine carving. Tung oil was applied as a sealer to protect the doors from the harsh weather. To celebrate the timely accomplishment, the Duncan family, who sponsored the project from the beginning, organized the reception at the studio. The artists and participating technicians shared their experiences with the members of the community. The press was actively covering the process of the creation of the doors. On August 29, 1999, the church was inaugurated, finalizing 12 months of arduous work.